There is no doubt that the first Mass Effect had a special place in my heart, but a lot of issues stood in the way of me being able to recommend it to people. And thankfully, this isn't the case for BioWare's next stab at the series, and this time I was left with a saddening thought that the game actually had to end and that I had to stop playing it.
And there's the downside.
The story this time around takes a much more darker approach, as the universe is back in turmoil and Shepard has had a rough ride that has led him to join the Cerberus team, which is a shady business led by the Elusive Man, whose sole purpose is to make humanity recognised in the galaxy. This time around, whole human colonies are being taken and the Collectors are behind it.
Those things are Collectors? You mean, they're real?
But why they're doing it and what the Reapers have to do with it in the grander scale of things is something I obviously won't spoil.
This is a waste of time. I feel as good as ever.
Of course, if you've played the first game, then you can take your save game and import it into the story of the sequel. It does add to the experience in subtle ways, such as characters will crop up, but the main benefit is that all your main decisions from the first game carry over, meaning that if you killed a character from the first game, then they aren't going to show up in this sequel. It doesn't take anything away from the story if you don't do this, however, as BioWare have catered for the people who haven't played the first, but you will find it much more meaningful if you know certain returning characters and their backstories. All the characters have their own personal missions that you can choose to do, where you find out what drives them and why they agreed to join with you on this suicide mission. These were easily my favourite parts of the game, as the second portion, the exploration, isn't still quite what I wanted it to be.
Like I just wanna... I don't know.
The structure and pacing of the game has been changed quite significantly. You still have your galaxy map from where you can dive into specific solar systems which are made up of planets. Some have missions on them, others are just for scanning so you can receive minerals to purchase upgrades, and others when scans will detect anomalies which in turn activate side missions. The system is much better than the first, which took you into the dreaded Mako down to the planet's surface. Instead, this system has been thrown away with and replaced with a shuttle, which takes you right down to the planet's surface where you jump out and start shooting. Mineral extraction is still a sore spot in the game's pacing, however, as you will be fighting huge scale wars, only to then have to scan multiple planets with the universe's worst scanner to find minerals. Seriously, it is just too damn slow.
Status of system operator is not known. General distress. Beacon auto processing interrupted at parse point ACO 655.
Scans have found something.
Huge improvements have been made to the combat side of the game. The shooting is a lot more competent and now can be looked on as a third-person shooter. However, weapon selection has been trimmed down quite significantly, so much so in fact that there isn't even an inventory screen, which means no loot. This doesn't hurt the game, but does mean that the RPG elements have been dumbed down.
What was that? Gone nearsighted, old friend.
Burn, you son of a bitch.
Most of the technical issues which were in the first Mass Effect have been ironed out. The conversations now have a much more dynamic camera, so will switch between angles and shots more frequently during the many dialogue trees, which adds a much more varied look to each conversation than a static, uninteresting speech. As a matter of fact, these are probably the best dialogue trees that BioWare have made to date. There are still a few minor texture pop-ins and unclean cuts between shots in cutscenes, but nothing detracts away from the game, which in turn means that the game runs much more seamlessly. Mass Effect 2 is a tour de force of sci-fi action. Even though it shaves away some of the features that made it an RPG, it adds and fixes many ideas that were just not fully realised in the first Mass Effect. When a game makes me sit on my Xbox for 4 days straight and not get bored or tired of playing the same game, it's doing a lot of things right.